Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Florida. My name is Scott Morgan, Rock Motor City Madmouth. Got a good crew here tonight, and probably I'm looking at a permanent crew for this particular show here. I have obviously Madman Mancini, who comes on a lot of the Fire Up shows. Mark, welcome back.
Always a pleasure to be on the show that's sweeping the country with the knowledge and expertise of all you great talents. I'm just going to sit back, absorb it like a sponge, and throw some comments here and there.
Very good. All right, Avi Greenwald got his feet wet with us last week on the Fire Up show, but now he's involved with Fire Up Florida, which he's going to be permanently. I think that's the one thing that since Avi lives in our state, I met Avi at a Jacksonville Jaguars game, and we became good friends since. Avi, well, welcome to your new home here on Fire Up Florida.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be back. Looking forward to sharing my enthusiastic comments and ideas about the Miami Dolphins, Jacksonville Jaguars, and whatever I can do for you going forward. I am really looking forward to it, and look forward to sharing all of my knowledge and my ideas. Absolutely.
Well,
appreciate having me.
We're looking forward to having you. Of course, Greg Fuchs, what can I say? He's a writer for the South Florida Tribune, and he does a marvelous job doing that. Mark, what I'm going to do is, obviously, I know you don't have as much time tonight, so I'm going to get this out of the way early. Why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you earlier and the name of your company, and then we're going to get to the topics.
Well, XM 203, Sirius 217, the Sports Byline on Fridays with Fred Wallen and Artie Shores. Liberty Bell Smack, WWDB AM 860 out of Philly with Marianne Costello, Sal Tartaglia, and myself. I do a Pittsburgh Pirate podcast, second year in the row with the first base coach, Tarek Brock. And blessed to be in a lot of other cities, man, across the thing, and Mancini Media, and just producing or being a part of a lot of different shows across the airwaves. And this is a blessing to be a part of this one, and I love you guys all dearly.
Well, I enjoy being on the show on Saturday with you and Bruce Kessinger on Sports Talk Saturday as well. So I look forward to that. I plan it on my schedule. I enjoy matching wits ends with you guys and talking to the impressive guests that you tend to bring on. So, Bruce, if you're listening, watching, great. I enjoy working with you. Mark, I don't have to tell you how I feel about you. I think you know by now. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Fuchs. Greg Fuchs wrote a story on fish and fence. So why don't you go ahead and give everybody an overview, and then we're going to defer to Mark original first, and then we'll go around the horn. All right, Greg, give everybody an idea what that story was about.
All right, thank you, Scott. Good evening, everybody. In South Florida, one team season is winding down, and the other team's season is just beginning. Let's start with the winding down season. And if you're a Miami Marlins fan, you were probably happy this season is almost over because it has been a tough year. Very little has gone right for that team this year. They lost their third in a row today. I think they've lost 12 out of 14 now, on a pace to lose 96 games, fourth worst record in the National League. I think back in April, Marlins management looked at this as a borderline playoff contender, but nothing has gone right. It's been a combination of a lot of injuries to both position players and pitchers, and guys just not performing. I mean, Jorge Soler and Avisail Garcia were their two big season acquisitions, free agents, and they have done absolutely nothing this year. And one of the challenges for the Marlins next year is they're stuck with those two contracts. 2 more years for Soler, I think at like 11, 12 million a year, and Garcia's like 14 million a year for 3 more years. I'm sure they'd love to get rid of those guys, but based on how they played this year, I'm not sure how many takers there's going to be. I mean, the one thing that has gone right for the Marlins this year has been Sandy Alcantara. He's been the only guy who's been able to stay healthy and perform above expectations this year. A month or so ago, he might have been the odds-on favorite to win the Cy Young. He'll still get some votes, but I'm guessing Julio Urias and the Dodgers will probably win that. He's second in the league in wins. He leads the league in ERA, and I think he's second in WHIP. And he's playing for the best team in baseball. So I think Alcantara missed his window there to win the Cy Young, but he has been the only saving grace for the franchise this year. And that's my quick take on the Marlins. I'm wondering what someone like Mark thinks about the Marlins being from a non-Florida guy.
Well, I think the first thing is that comes to mind is the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and get different results. I think the beginning and the end of this team was when Derek Jeter didn't get the keys to the team to really run it the way he wanted to run it. I mean, here was a winner that played with the New York Yankees, was a mainstay there, won titles and everything. I love Don Mattingly, and you're right, Greg, when you look at Sandy Alcantara, I covered the game out here in Los Angeles basically when, the Dodgers lit him up. I like the way he is as far as a pitcher, and I think they can build around him. But the way this league is set up now is you better have a great minor league system so you can start bringing kids up to the majors and letting them get their feet wet the last month of the season, because you need something in 2023, and the future doesn't look too bright if you're trying to get somewhere and you're competing with the Atlantas and the New Yorks in this division. These teams are going to be sitting up there for a while, and you can throw the Phillies in the mix. So the real question would be battling the Washington Nationals to find out who doesn't get in the cellar there.
Avi, what's your take?
Well, it's been really rough for the Marlins as of lately, as well as finally calling it in to Jazz Chisholm's season. Finally, he's been out obviously since July 28th. They were wondering, I'm hoping with some rehab he'd be able to come back, maybe do a little bit of DHing. But they finally called it, I believe, a couple days ago that they're just going to cut it and end his season there. So they're going to keep him off. It was revealed he ended up having a stress fracture. So I think that was a good decision on them going forward, since the playoffs are pretty much out of the picture. They've only been hitting 208 in the last 15 games. It's just about 2.7 runs per game. They've only won a few games in that stretch. So it's time to, really think about what they're going to be doing here in the offseason. And like he said, they're just tired of doing the same thing over and over again. Obviously, the big signing of Avisail Garcia in the offseason didn't really look like it worked out too much. But I'm really curious as to see what the Marlins will be doing going forward.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to this whole thing is you had 3 All-Stars. You had Jazz Chisholm, who definitely got voted in, actually. Garrett Cooper, and you also had Sandy Alcantara. And everybody thought Sandy Alcantara should have been the starter, but Clayton Kershaw got it because he was in L.A. So let me, before I go further, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel, or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter @TribuneSouth. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker. iHeartRadio has us, okay? Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to go to youtube.com, you can just go ahead and look for South Florida Tribune in your search button and then hit subscribe. Just want to make sure we got that out there earlier. Back to my quick Marlins thought. Yeah, they've had a lot of injuries, almost looked like a MASH unit. Max Meyer showed a lot of potential, and he was out very quickly. So, and then, of course, the status of Don Mattingly remains up in the air as well. So I think over the course of the next few weeks, we'll be addressing those things, but not tonight. We're just going to focus on some basic generalities is what we're going to do, and I think that's what we're able to do so far. So, all right, with that said, Greg, you want to talk about the Miami Dolphins?
Before I do, one closing thought on the Marlins. The one thing the Marlins have going for them, they have a lot of starting pitching depth, both in the minors and major league. And management's already come out and said, we are more than willing to trade some of that pitching to get some position players. So look for that in the offseason.
Yeah, the one thing I've also mentioned on Sports Talk Saturday with Mark and Bruce Kessinger, Mark, I've been very consistent with this, that the Marlins only go as far as their bats will take them. And how many times, Mark, have I said that on that show? If they don't have any offense, the Marlins are going to struggle and they're not going to get in the postseason. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I agree with that, but I think when you lose a guy that you should have gave reins to in Derek Jeter, because I think he was the guy that could have turned this program around. They would have been in better shape than they are now. And when he didn't get the money and stuff to build this thing, then he walked away from it. So I think that's the big key. When you got guys like that can turn organizations around, like a John Sherholtz type, right, Derek Jeter, Dombrowski, these kind of guys, you got to, as an owner, you got to give them the keys to the organization, and you take a step back. Otherwise, it turns into a Donald Sterling out here with the Clippers and stuff like that, and it just turns into a Mickey Mouse operation.
It's funny how you mentioned that, Mark. Kim Ng has been given the reins as general manager, first female general manager in Major League Baseball. But at some point or another in the next year or two, Kim Ng is going to have to be held responsible for what's going on too. So, that's something that we'll monitor over the course of time. But Mark, you really nailed a very good point. I'm going to reemphasize that. Seeing Derek Jeter go, he must have known something wasn't right. He got out when he did. And I think that when you lose a baseball mind is one thing, but when you lose a Hall of Fame legendary baseball mind, that's another point altogether. Great point, Mark. I really appreciate you mentioning that. All right, Greg, let's move onward to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, let's go to the exciting story in South Florida. I mean, the optimism for the Dolphins team this year probably hasn't been this high since the days of Dan Marino lining up under center. It all started with, even though it wasn't a popular move at the time when they let Brian Flores go, I think a lot of Dolphin fans didn't like it. But I think Dolphin fans really like, especially now, the hiring of Mike McDaniel as the coach. Very player-friendly, media-friendly, offensive genius, supposedly. Supposed to be very run-oriented, which is one thing the Dolphins have struggled with forever. And they brought in, in support of that, they brought in a couple offensive linemen, Taron Armstead and Connor Williams. They brought in a couple of running backs, Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. They also signed Cedric Wilson. And, they brought back the entire defense. The second half of last year, the Dolphins had one of the best defenses in the NFL. They brought virtually every single player back. They brought back the defensive coordinator. They signed free agents, Melvin Ingram and Trey Flowers. So that defense should be loaded for bear this year. So it's the offensive side of the ball. And when I was mentioning all those players they added, I left out the big guy, some guy named Tyreek Hill. Who would have thought that, 6-8 months ago, that he would be on the Dolphins roster? So all those guys they added, Jalen Waddle coming back in his second season. I mean, fans are just fired up for this team. Looking forward to see what Tua can do. I mean, if there's two big questions about this Dolphin team, one is obviously Tua. I don't think Tua's going to be bad. The question is, how good can he be? We will see. And the other question is still the offensive line. Despite picking up Armstead and Williams, offensive line does not have a lot of depth. They have a couple of young guys in Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg who struggled last year, but they're in the starting lineup this year. So those are the two big question marks. But when you got the playmakers the Dolphins have, and they might have the fastest team in the league, with Hill, Waddle, Cedric Wilson, Edmonds, and Mostert, those guys can fly. They can make guys miss on tackles. And that's why people are fired up about this team this year. Now, we got the first game behind us. You beat the Patriots, beat them by 13 points. Nothing wrong with any of that. Their next three games, at Baltimore, home against the Bills, who have absolutely pounded them in the Josh Allen era. And then they go on the road again to play the Bengals. So they're going to have to play a lot better the next 3 weeks than they did yesterday against the Patriots. The defense is solid. I'm not worried about them. My biggest concern after watching yesterday's game is that offensive line. Tua was sacked 3 times, under pressure several other times. And the running game, I think they finished, don't quote me, 45 yards on like 25 carries, like 2.1 yard a carry. That just won't get it done when you don't have that run option and defenders aren't, thinking the Dolphins are going to run the ball and Tua fakes it. You're not going to have that that play run pass option if you're not running the ball. So I'm sure that's probably the number one thing McDaniel's going to work on in practice this week. I think they're going to also work on finding how to get other guys involved because they really depended on Waddle and Hill for good reason. They're their two best players. But Cedric Wilson, Gesicki, I think need to get them more involved, need to get that running game going. And I think Dolphin fans are very bullish. I think they'll be extremely disappointed if this team doesn't make the playoffs. And I would even take it a step further. this team has a lot of talent. They need to get to the playoffs and win some playoff games. So I'll turn it over to the rest of the crowd here to get their takes on the Dolphins for this year.
All right, Mark, we'll start off with you.
Well, first of all, you bring up an interesting point because the Dolphins, to me, haven't been relevant since Dan Marino was there. I've seen the David Woodleys go. I've seen the Don Strocks. I've seen all these guys, the Ryan Fitzpatricks, the Tannehills, and stuff like that. I like the speed they have with Waddle, the Alabama kid. I like Tyreek Hill. But the other problem is you're in the AFC, and the AFC to me is like the SEC in the college football. Now, they might have a chance if they were saddled in the NFC, but the AFC, I don't think they're making the playoffs because, first of all, you're looking up at Buffalo in that division that's on a revenge tour of sorts after they got railroaded by Kansas City last year. And everybody in the AFC has gotten really better. You know, I know it's one game and, you know, it's like a birthday. Everybody has one every year. But you brought that schedule into the forefront, and the Dolphins got, you know, going to Baltimore, and Baltimore manhandled the Jets. It's going to be interesting. They got one hell of a defense, and anybody named Harbaugh has their team prepared. But the other question here is in cold weather, if I'm not mistaken, this Dolphin team, when the temperature's under 30 degrees, I think they've only won 3-4 games. So you get into the December when you got to start winning games, and they got to come out to L.A. to play the Chargers in December, warm weather city. But still, I think they're a couple years away. The Brian Flores thing left a bad taste in my mouth. And the other thing is, I love Tua and I loved him in Alabama, but we're not winning with 5'5", 5'6", 5'7" quarterbacks in the NFL that can't see defenses. I'm a pocket passer type of guy. That's why I like a Trevor Lawrence type that sits in the pocket and can see the defenses.
Good points, Mark. All right, Avi, where do you want to go with what Mark? Mark gave you a lot to work with. Avi, where do you want to take Mark?
Well, first of all, I'd like to note on the defense. Now, the Dolphins, like you said, have not been relevant since Dan Marino. We've never really been a balanced team. We couldn't really say we had an explosive offense. We didn't have an explosive defense over the years. We just really couldn't get it together. Now, I'm a firm believer, not like you said, it's a sour taste in our mouths after the Brian Flores thing, but I do believe there was a big thing that he brought to us, and that is our defense. I believe this team on paper so far is a defensive-minded team. I believe we're going to win some ball games because of our defense. Obviously, we have the weapons now that have come in the likes of Tyreek Hill, last year's rookie Jalen Waddle, to come help us out on the offense side of the ball. We have all new runners. Obviously, Myles Gaskin slid to the back where I believe he should be. But we got a lot of work to do. On the defensive side, though, I will note that I was not impressed with the run defense of the Dolphins. If we're going to want to really step it up, we're going to have to shut down that run. We're going to have to – they look like the New England was doing what they wanted right up the middle, and it didn't look so good. But, look, it's a long season. Miami's I think they got a lot of balance now finally to their team. But again, the one thing I think I'm wanting to see what is going to be happening with is Tua. Is he going to be consistent? Will he be able to continue game managing and winning these games? I'm totally not impressed with his arm strength. Yes, he's a very accurate ball thrower, but I'm not impressed at all with his arm strength. He missed a few throws. And I'm just really wondering how they're going to go forward with this. Hopefully Mike McDaniel's got a game plan like it looked. But I will say the one thing I do like is that the taking of the chances on fourth down in yesterday's game. I believe that that will bring the trust of the players. They will trust their coach, and that is huge with the new coach coming in. And I really believe that the Dolphins, if they can really trust their coach and the way that he manages his game, they will surprise a lot of people this season. And I think they'll win more games than people could see happening. But I believe that it's their defense that will probably win them some ball games. I want to see more out of Tua. Obviously, he's got the weapons to go forward, but I think this is it for Tua. And, he has to really prove himself this year. We're going to probably be looking somewhere else next season.
All right, let me go over a few points that stand out. Number one, each and every one of you guys are making outstanding points. Every one of you, Greg, Mark, Avi, good stuff. Here, item number one. They played the New England Patriots yesterday, okay? And I've appeared on a couple of shows last week and talked about this very subject. What I can tell you what the New England Patriots don't have, okay? An offensive coordinator. Bill Belichick, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge. Maybe I'll just call them the modern version of the three you-know-whats, okay? Because that's what you have, okay? So you had no offensive coordinator, item number one. Number two, I know that Tua is good at throwing 5 to 7, 8 yard passes where you turn yards after the catch, and the receivers look good. He looks good. So, and item number three, I know they have excellent wide receivers, but they do have to have balance on the running attack. So you weren't dealing what I consider a full deck with the New England Patriots. This is a team I don't think that's going to actually make the playoffs. I really, really don't. And the reality of the situation is they're going to regress. They lost Josh McDaniels, okay, to the Raiders. And now, from what I hear, Mac Jones suffered a back injury. I don't know the severity of it. But the Miami Dolphins will always be haunted. If this Tua thing doesn't work out, they could have had Justin Herbert. That will kill them down the road. I don't care what anybody says. Now, with that said, I'm going to incorporate another piece of this equation. We have about 5 or 10 minutes left to go before we call it a night. Lamar Jackson will become a free agent. He will not be, they're not going to franchise him. So is it possible the local kid can come back home? Yeah, I think Stephen Ross would spend the money to bring him here. We'll bring that up a later date. I'm just kind of throwing those things out there. So there's a lot of moving parts. I think Mike McDaniels, from what I hear, is a good offensive mind, but I'm not going to go out there and drink that Kool-Aid yet. I'm just not going to do it. He's a position coach, okay? They had to pay Brian Flores off. They needed somebody that were going to give him a good opportunity with an offensive vision, is what they have. And, Mike McDaniels could still turn out well. The sample size is small, but we're going to find out as our Fire Up Florida series continues, the different progress that we have going forward, and that's really what it comes out. So, yeah, Mark, what do you got?
Well, we can all remember the Dolphins in the heyday. They would run you to death with that football with Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, the wide receivers, Clayton and Duper. That's a far cry. And football has changed over the years. But to get back to that relevance of what the Dolphins were when I was growing up, you need that pocket type of passer. And like Avi said, is what I was saying is, I don't know if Tua is the thing. And I look at Tua like I look at Kyler Murray in Arizona. Right. You're paying a lot of money to these guys. And I know quarterbacks are like buying houses. But, sooner or later, you got to cut your losses and realize these guys aren't going to lead you. Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback, but I would start looking at, even at Jimmy Garoppolo. He's another one that can give you that, type of guy. Or if, the Raiders were going back and forth with Carr till they finally realized it, he would have been another one in South Florida that can get the ball downfield.
Excellent point, Mark. So you know what? I'm staying with this for a moment. Okay. First of all, you talk about pocket. I've always been a firm believer that you want a pocket quarterback, but what makes the Jimmy Garoppolo thing that you just said a lot better is Mike McDaniels was his coach in San Francisco. So I could see that actually being a good fit, Mark, now that you brought that up. We'll find out. He's going to become a free agent, no tags, has a no-trade clause unless he goes where he wants to go. So, yeah, I think Jimmy Garoppolo could be a name that, and let alone the fact he's taking a team to a Super Bowl as well. So, I don't know, for some reason, Jimmy Garoppolo does intrigue me down the road living in Southern Florida. I really do. So I think that, and I am a firm believer about the pocket quarterback. Go ahead, Avi. What do you got?
No, I just was thinking it kind of lets me down. The Dolphins have been letting me down for so long now when it comes to building the team. And I'll tell you what, as far as I can remember, you guys got to remember, Dan Marino, when he was drafted in 1983, he was coming to a Super Bowl. They were actually in the Super Bowl the year previous. So the team that he had, he kind of just popped in there, and he already had a team that was pretty good. So as he progressed, his team regressed, and they didn't add anybody to help him. And I believe even after, that's one of the reasons why we never saw him back in the Super Bowl, and we never really saw much success. You'd see it here and there, but nothing much as going back to the 84-85 season. But after he retired, like I said before, the Dolphins just never really put balance together. They'd have pieces in certain positions that attributed to the team winning. Sure, never had a quarterback. We had a couple decent receivers. I think maybe the best receiver we had was one season, Brandon Marshall. We had O.J. McDuffie for a little bit. We just never really put it together. But I'm really hoping that the time has changed. I really like the young team, the young guys that we have on defense. We got Javon Holland, Jalen Phillips. Those guys right there, I believe, are the future of that defense, and they should be there for years to come. We just got to build balance around them. Offense and defense.
I'll go to you in a moment, Mark, but Avi makes a great point. You had David Whitney and Don Sprock that got into the Super Bowl. They haven't had a relevant running game since the 70s when you had Mercury Morris, Jim Kick, and Larry Zonka. I know they've tried to have Ricky Williams was all right for a while, but he got burned out. And their coaching carousel seems to have been a little high. You never had one when you had Dave Wannstedt, Jimmy Johnson, and Don Shula. I know George Wilson, I believe, was the first head coach ever in the franchise, and now all of a sudden they've had a coaching carousel. So some things. All right, Mark.
Well, the other thing I wanted to add, I'm sure Greg would jump in, and Avi and you, I look at consistency. And when I saw Don Shula, he was very consistent. The team was mentally prepared to play each and every week. Nothing against all the other guys, but they weren't in that class. So when accountability and character and integrity and communication are brought into the equation on whatever you run, it's going to trickle on down. We haven't seen that. We're talking about Marino. We're talking about Duper and Zonka. And you can add Shula in that. And this is since 72 when they went 14-0, I believe, in that season. It'll never be broken, but that's a lot of decades of trying to get this team to that level.
Yeah, Mark, that's another good point. You got to run. I think Dan Marino, to me, is one of the best pocket passers I've ever seen. But the biggest thing that I like about him is his quick release. I've never seen a quarterback, and I've seen a lot of them in my years covering the NFL, have a quicker release than Dan Marino. The only problem that Dan Marino didn't do is he didn't buy into Jimmy Johnson's system where he wanted a running attack to go with the passing. And we all know that Jimmy Johnson won a pair of Super Bowls with the Cowboys and really should have gotten a third. Barry Switzer got his gift wrapped into him where Jimmy would be wearing 3. And what have the Cowboys done lately? We'll save that for another show. So I'm with you. I mean, of course, Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, Mark Ingram, the Miami Dolphins have never had a problem attracting top caliber receivers. So you just have to get that. You have to get that running attack. And they attempted 1 year ago to have David Overstreet, but unfortunately they could never come to terms on a contract. Went to Canada and then unfortunately was killed in an accident. So meanwhile, that gives you a pretty good overview of the Dolphins and the Marlins. As we continue to go into the season, we'll have more and more updates on the Marlins for a few more weeks, and then we're going to be pivoting to the Dolphins, and we'll even sprinkle a little bit of Miami Hurricane stuff along the way. So
one last thought on Tua.
Sure.
Would I prefer a Justin Herbert or a Trevor Lawrence at quarterback? Yes, I would. But they're not here. We have Tua. And if that offensive line and that running game plays to the level we hope that McDaniels used to see in San Francisco, and that defense is as good as I think it is, they don't need Tua to be a Justin Herbert. They don't need him to throw 45 times a game and for 400 yards. I mean, yesterday, I'll admit, he did not play spectacular. And there was a couple of times Hill was wide open. He didn't get the ball to him. But he still went 20 of 33 for 270 yards and no turnovers. For a game where he didn't play spectacular against a good defensive team, that's nothing to sneeze at. And one last thought about the Dolphins offense, and this is more than about Tua, it's probably more the offensive line. The offense scored 13 points yesterday. That's not going to cut it in today's NFL. They need to double that. They need to average 26 plus if you want to make the playoffs.
Well, let me also, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad I'm going to bring this name up to watch out for. Skyler Thompson, the third string quarterback, is a guy to watch out for. Just remember, folks, Skyler Thompson, the kid, he's a developmental guy. I think he has some pretty good stats. I believe, wasn't he, Greg, taken out of Kansas State, if I remember right?
Kansas State, like he was there for 5 or 6 years, started 40-something games. He's 25 years old. He's older than Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Watch out for Skyler Thompson.
He was incredibly impressive in preseason.
Yeah, well, then that's why he made the team. And another thing that I'll close the show on here is the biggest thing for Tua Tagovailoa must stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, he's in trouble. So, all right, Mark, what do you got?
Well, and not only that, Avi's heavy on that defense, and the defense is good. But I think what they're lacking is a Zach Thomas, a Jonathan Taylor, somebody that can stop the run. And we haven't seen that in Miami in quite some time.
Right.
You hit the nail on the head there. Everyone talks about replacing Marino. They've never replaced Zach Thomas. Landon Roberts is not the answer.
No, Jerome Baker is not the answer.
Exactly.
No, I agree. No, I'm just, you know what? I agree with you. Tua, I'm thinking with Tua, the only thing positive I can say about Tua is that he is a game manager. He's managing the game from what the coach puts on there and out onto the field for him to do. It's just up to him to consistently execute in the fourth quarter with the game on the line. That's what we need. He doesn't have to be the superstar we thought we were drafting, which we probably should have known he was never going to be a superstar. But we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, he's winning ball games. And isn't that what matters? So we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, if we can manage to win some ball games with Tua at quarterback doing what he does, we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll work out. But I just don't see him there long term.
Yeah, well, winning ball games, we'll see. Talk to me at the end of the 2022 season. We'll see where we're at.
For sure.
But we'll be giving updates along the line. What a great show I have. I love introducing new crews. And to me, you guys were absolutely fantastic. With that said, okay, Avi, that concludes this edition of Fire Up Florida. I'll go over some other stuff real quick. Everybody can go ahead and promote themselves again. Mark Mancini, good job. Avi Greenwald, good job. Greg Hughes, I know to expect out of you, so it is what it is. So, but meanwhile, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you need to find us on YouTube, just go to youtube.com and find South Florida Tribune. You can subscribe with that way. So with that said, okay, Avi, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
You can get me Twitter, greenwald.avi, or you can find me on Facebook, Avi _Greenwald.7. If you want to find me, that's where you can find me.
Greg?
Yeah, you can catch my articles at www.southfloridatribune.com. And on Twitter, you can follow me, G Fuchs, at Gregory Fuchs.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, you have two
Mark
tracks.
Mancini at you can catch me if you go to Facebook on the Laker floor, Mancini Sports, at Twitter, and Pittsburgh 51 on Instagram.
And I also want to point out a shout out to Candy Ebling, does an unbelievable job. She does. She puts all these shows up, does a marvelous job putting the content up. And without Candy Ebling's effort, I think the South Florida Tribune would be in trouble. So, in my opinion, she's the most unsung hero that we have out there. On Tuesday night, another edition of Fire Up Wisconsin will have myself, Candy Ebling, and Eric Katz. That'll be in prime time, approximately 8 o'clock tomorrow. So there will be times when it comes on 9 o'clock. I'm sure that Mark Mancini hopefully will have a chance to come on that from time to time. We'll see, depending on the schedule. Our normally scheduled show, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, won't be on, but we'll incorporate a video from Cooperstown, New York on there as well. So you'll be able to track some of my travels back that way. But meanwhile, what a great job. And I will tell you, folks, if you're watching us video, get used to this crew. This is the permanent crew for Fire Up Florida. Greg Fuchs, Madman Mancini, Avi Greenwald, all did an outstanding job. And Avi made his debut last Monday night on Labor Day on Fire Up itself. So, Avi, I'm glad to have you back here.
Thank you.
Of course, we had a lot of
It's a
fun
pleasure.
when we're up in Jacksonville creating a friendship, and because of that, I have myself a dynamite crew. So, meanwhile, this concludes this edition of Fire Up Florida. On behalf of Greg Fuchs, Madman Mancini, and Avi Greenwald, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we will catch you on the next edition. God bless everybody. Have yourself a great night, and be safe out there. COVID's still out there, but try to do the necessary things. You have to be cautious about it. But more importantly, I'm proud of my crew tonight. To me, they were A1. Okay, so good evening, everybody, and we'll catch you the next time on Fire Up Florida.
Good night.